What is Office 365? It's an integrated experience of apps and services designed to help you pursue your passion and grow your business. Get apps like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and more, updated monthly with the latest features and security updates. Use cloud-powered email to reach customers and coworkers wherever work takes you. Collaborate in Microsoft Teams, the new hub for teamwork, where you can chat, organize meetings, and share files. Save files to OneDrive with 1 terabyte of online storage, allowing access across devices and on the go. Run your business with the business apps, empowering you to manage customer scheduling, invoicing, referrals, and more, all from one place. Protect your data with 24/7 security and support backed by Microsoft. With Office 365, you have more time to build your business and achieve even more.
All right, it is September 20th, all day, right, Todd?
All day, which happens to be a Friday.
I'm Doug Splinter, director at the MTC in Minneapolis, and you are?
I'm an architect here in the St. Louis MTC.
Yes, indeed you are. Todd and I are just back from an internal conference in Las Vegas. We flew in around midnight or 1 a.m. last night, depending on which flight you were on. Todd later than me, but we care so much. We care so much. We're here.
I care so much it hurts.
All right, let's get to it. It's a light week, so we will not probably use the whole thing unless we start pontificating, which could happen. You never know. But we'll see what happens. Could go any way for you. I got a little bit of security stuff, some cool SharePoint stuff, and a little more security dialogue, and a real-world example I just encountered this morning of a customer following our best practices that were inflicted in a good way upon me in order to secure my access to their environment as we collaborate.
This one was fun. You found this before we went live.
It was just like a proud moment for me. I don't know, like when you have a good customer who follows best practices and then you have to go through them and it works like it's all supposed to. So that happened this morning around
I had secure one of those moments not too long ago either. And the customer was like, "Why are you surprised?" I'm like, I don't know. But
I don't know. Maybe because we do things like 99.9% of identity attacks can be compromised. It can be compromised identity attacks can be remediated by MFA, and yet only less than 50% of organizations have MFA activated. Maybe that's why, right?
Yep.
Like those kind of stats are not on our side. I think I'm up first, so if you want to cut back over to there we go. Put Todd nobody puts Todd in the corner, but I just put Todd in the corner.
Except Emily and Doug.
That's exactly right. You got to be nice to us, right? So on top of it, first, and I'll put this in the show notes, Todd, but they're not in there, so I'll get them before you do the post. And I just saw this one that the Marsh Microsoft Global Cyber Risk Perception Survey released. Worth a skim. It talks about perception overall, like what do people think are the top risks? Where are people focusing? What kind of investments are they making? What's the appetite for government investment? So if you're a security professional and you want to understand what's the landscape look like, almost from a social perception and politics standpoint, as not from a tactical threat standpoint, although there is some statistical thing on top of that. I think it's interesting that the big cyber investments are focusing on prevention, not resiliency. So if you think about, me, I preached for years that, the CISSP kind of thing is about confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As a triumvirate to truly have a secure system, because a properly secured system is there, only accessible and changeable by the people who need it, and all information is, confidential. So the integrity of everything must be preserved and it has to be there when you need it. But anyway, people are really focusing on prevention. And so the C continues to be the heavy weight, right? Everyone's concerned about confidentiality, which I think we can get overlensed on that and ignore other imperatives.
Were there any surprises for you from since the report you said focused on perception?
No. Okay. Can I fall over and die from not surprise? So I got over to the screen for a brief moment. 64% of respondents said a cyber attack on their organization would be the biggest driver of increased cyber risk spending. Cut back. The biggest
Only
driver for healthy
actually?
eating and low sodium is a heart attack.
Right.
Are you surprised? I'm not.
Well, I'm surprised it's not higher, actually. Right?
Yeah. 83% have strengthened their system over the past 2 years, but less than 30% have conducted training or modeled cyber loss scenarios. So essentially, we're still doing the end user training thing, which quantitatively I am suspect as now this is my academic side, not my Microsoft side. So hat off. But quantitatively, some of the academic studies, and they're not fully vetted out, so I wouldn't quote them as authoritative, but it does seem to be that policy and end user security enablement training is an important part of a cultural vector, but it's the weak moments, which are training bypasses those weak moments when you're just busy and you accidentally,
Yep.
you know what I'm saying?
That one moment.
That one moment. And so how do you defend against the weak moments? And it's the weak moments, not a lack of comprehensive cyber training, that tend to be the fault. So the investment in prevention actually lines up with what I perceive as a more realistic remediation of threats.
Mm-hmm.
Now, prevention needs automation, AI, machine learning, because we cannot, to use the analogy I always use about fire safety, we can't run around sniffing for smoke in every room in our buildings. We have fire detectors, right? We have smoke detectors, and in data centers, different particulate detectors and all sorts of advanced things. And we're learning how to do that consistently and interoperably well inside of cyber, but we're not there yet. So this is just a really interesting thing. I thought the other one was that 47% of organizations have cyber insurance now on top of it, and bigger companies are more likely than small, although I think small should do it because for them, an event could really hit them, not just reputation-wise, which is technically recoverable, but it could be enough regulatorily where that could materially impact their viability as an organization.
Is that generally what, I mean, not that you're a cybersecurity insurance expert, is that generally what these things are covering, is the cost of remediating the leaks and those kinds of things? Or
well, it's like anything else. You can insure almost anything you want. The reputation to your business, the remediation of your revenue streams. But then your policy is gonna be way more expensive if you don't adhere to standards, CIS 20 and they're just not just gonna insure you because they will. I mean, it's like auto insurance. If you're a bad driver, you can go get auto insurance, but it's going to be one of those policies going to cost you 7 times as much as everybody else.
Right.
So, all right, I think it's now, and again, this is just a landscape organization. So, at first I wasn't going to bring it up because it doesn't have anything tactical on it. I thought, no, people should go through this, right?
Right.
And so I was encouraged that 77% of people are citing at least one innovative operational technology they adopted or are considering. So, in the great cycle of, build it and operate it, right? Anything that when people say innovative operations, that tends to speak to me around automation.
Love it. I think it's a good one.
Yeah, so check it out. I liked it. And again, I'll toss it in the notes page. Okay, so then let's cut over to the real world experience that happened to Doug this morning. So you all know I'm a big fan of, I don't know, Todd, MFA?
A little bit,
but I also like terms of use and I like organizational policies to access things. So this morning, I hit the little button in the upper right-hand corner of Teams to switch networks, right? Because I'm a guest on several customer networks and we collaborate on ongoing projects. I know you are as well. And I popped over into the team to address a concern one of our customers had around something, and I have a lot of history with it. So I went in just to add my 2 cents before I sort of go off and onto the next thing. And here's what happened, and I blurred out all the logos and everything else. So I'm going to go full screen on this. And Emily, if you could cut over on top of it. No, I do not want presentation translator, or have that running on the broadcast. And so essentially what happened was, first of all, it said, hey, I didn't capture the box before. It basically said, this organization requires you to, prove who you are, click next to continue. And then this came in, right? It said, you have to do the terms of use. Now, I tried to just hit the accept button and get past the terms of use. And it was like, no, you can't do that. And then up popped the terms of use, and I had to scroll through and read them on top of it. And then it said, hey, you need to do the Microsoft Authenticator app. Okay, you can cut back in order to use this, or you can use a different way in order to do it, right? And so when I hit next, the next stage, which I did not capture, it just had the QR code, which I didn't want to publish out there, right? Even though it's unique, I just thought, So, and then I just scanned it with my Authenticator app, approved the authentication, and boom, I was in.
That's awesome.
Yes, it was. And so this is, now think about the authentication flow from our historical perspective. I'm a B2B guest inside of this environment, right? I don't work for this company. I work for Microsoft. So I pop into their network, or they invite me in. The next step up was, hey, you have to acknowledge, you have to say you want to continue and prove yourself. You have to read this terms of use, and then you have to MFA. Now, we MFA inside of Microsoft, yes?
Yep.
Right? So I am already MFA'd in order to be in there. So I have an MFA validated token. But this particular business entity had basically set the rule that said it's not enough for you to MFA prove yourself from Microsoft, you have to register a profile for my organization in your so now I have for this company, company X, right? I now have a profile for them in the Authenticator app.
Yep.
Because they could have said, anyone who tells me they MFA'd, I'm good. Regulatorily, they're not permitted to do that, right? They have to be the ones to validate the MFA. And so now they're in control of the MFA, but me as a user, still have a seamless experience. The Authenticator app pops up, I tap my code or fingerprint, and I'm in. Same thing when we do the Microsoft as an employee. So it was just this really great security experience, and I immediately praised them for it on the thing. I was like, oh my gosh, this was so great.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you called them out and told them good job. Sounds like you did.
Because my point was to go collaborate with them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of around an interesting challenge, which I guess we should cover on a different show, in that they have and they collaborate with the government, and they want to do B2B with Gov. But true government customers in the high security tenant don't currently permit their identities to be B2B consumed by a consumer entity. I don't know if you know that.
Okay.
And so we were talking about, well, what are the ways, what's the future for that look like and stuff, because we don't, you are the governor of your identity. You get to decide how it's used. Just because you want to consume something doesn't mean the far side person is going to permit you to consume it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so what if I would like to leverage your identity, but you don't want me to? And so we had to kind of talk through some of those things, and where are we in, as the world on these different journeys, and how does trust work? So it's kind of an interesting academic discussion around B2B identities between organizations with very different, sovereign versus commercial enterprises. So we'll probably cover that on a show, just so people know how some of that stuff works. But again, it was ironical that I had to prove myself on the way into an identity discussion.
That's awesome. Well, kudos to this mystery customer, and hopefully
if I'd gotten permission, I would have done a shout out to them publicly. Yeah. But if they want to tweet out thank you because they know who they are, hit us up at Todd Kidd and DSplinter, and we'll retweet it and give you public kudos. And so anyway, that's cool. All right. So next up for me was something that came out of the SharePoint blog. And so we released a new version of the Page Diagnostics tool. Have you seen?
I don't know the Page Diagnostics tool, Doug.
Okay, so let's cut full screen on this one, because looking at me, kind of irrelevant for this particular one. And so it's an update to the SharePoint Page Diagnostics tool. Now, if you've used the Page Diagnostics tool before, kudos to you. If you have not, it is a Chromium browser extension, right? Which, by the way, since Edge Dev, right, the new Microsoft Edge versions, or the leading edge builds of, I think, are Chromium based. So you can just go ahead and install that extension on top of it. And what you essentially do is you get these diagnostic reports around load time, where latency, what parts of things are latency, what the opportunities for performance improvement are on the page from a load and render time. So it's pretty cool. And so you just toss it in order to get it on top of it. And so the blog post goes over the whole deal. And what I liked was that you can just go ahead and where was the direct link for installing it? It can be downloaded directly or through the Chrome Web Store. So if you just click the direct, if you'll notice up top, because I'm inside of it, just says, hey, you can now add extensions from the Chrome Web Store to Microsoft Edge. Click on Add to Chrome to continue. And so I could click this button, and then boom, I've got that add-in present on top of it for the Web Store. Yeah, I thought that was particularly slick.
I think we're really building some muscle here on these end user built tools. We've got something similar for PowerApps. We've got something similar for Flow. Now we have the page checker for SharePoint. This is great.
Yeah. So I mean, I just think it's SharePoint probably has had the best historical set of portfolio of tools for diagnostics. But all right. So the next one was, and this is sort of another example of good read, because by the way, we are not particularly heavy on net new announcements this week. This is one of those weeks we talk about, hey, here's how you can use stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. We always say hey, geeks, give us a minute to catch up kind of thing, right?
Right.
You just take a little time off. This week is that for me. It's like kind of a reflective week for, hey, here's what's going on top of it. And so in this particular case, I want to talk a little bit about Azure Threat Protection. And this is my last one, and it goes back over to you. So if you remember from the day, we always talked about Advanced Threat Analytics, ATA. Yep. An entitlement of EMS that you install on-prem, and then it uses some cloud-based models, but it all executes locally. It does signal telemetry. It looks for vulnerable behaviors on your network and your machines, right? Yep. So it's a behavioral analytic tool for things that are over the wire. or certain log and agent-based things, but not like Defender ATP is. This is like the other half of the equation, the backside of your environment, if you will. And so what they talked about is, hey, we're moving increasingly towards these different risk portfolios and everything else. And so this is like coming around and talking about what is your identity posture on top of it. It lets you monitor user behaviors with learning-based activity. So it's looking for like behavioral analytics around authentication, and some other things do this too around MCAS and the rest of it. But if you're looking for like legacy protocol use, they sort of have a built-in detector for people using like NTLM v1, which believe it or not, right, still in use occasionally for things. And so this just lets you look at like LAN manager authentication level stuff, and you can look for any of those kind of things being present on your wire. Who's using it? Where are they coming from? And how can you go remediate those legacy protocol? And so essentially, if you look at like unconstrained Kerberos delegations, other Kerb attacks and everything else, those are just busted stone cold by the solution. So this is the cloud version, Azure ATP, the cloud forward-looking version of ATA. Not that we're deprecating ATA, because some people need it for on-prem, but ATP has the real-time models, leading-edge features, and cloud-powered analytics. So you send the logs up, you get the cloud analytics on top of it, and you still get the ability to come back around. So they went through and basically said, and there's all these different security assessments, like entities exposing credentials in clear text, legacy protocol use. And I was talking to Jason Floyd from Ascent Solutions. He said every time they deploy ATA or ATP, they find clear text LDAP, like every time.
Yep.
And it's interesting because the partners are out doing real world deployments. He's like, every time we put this out there, we find stuff, right? He's like, maybe it's not always LDAP, but it's always clear text credentials somewhere running on the wire, right? He goes, if you listen long enough, you're going to find some clear text credentials out there. Because
see some best.
Yeah, and now if you have a solution like this, it's looking for things and bad analytics, and if you recall, there's like service account stuff. Anyway, this is a really nice overview of why you should pay attention to this entitlement. And so I just liked it. I thought it was a really nice overview and what people are doing with it. And it's come a long way too, from a visualization, accessibility, the how actionable the data is. So I'm a big fan. And I think particularly if you have an entitlement to ATP, and if you have an ATA entitlement, get current on that, because that also has a lot of amazingness in it too. So no matter which way you're looking at your threat analytics and protection, either cloud or on-prem, get her done.
Awesome, man.
And I think, Mr. Kidda, that is a wrap for me. Yes, it is. Now it's cutting over to you.
All right. Well, Doug, kind of like you, this was a light week for me. I've got several PowerApps things and one very, very brief Power BI thing. I generally don't call these kinds of things out, but I've seen so many people innovating on the Power Platform, namely PowerApps and Flow, recently. I did want to call it out because this gives people a lot of inspiration for what's possible. What are people doing with PowerApps and those Power Platform applications? So this is the PowerApps Community Demo Extravaganza, and there's going to be some voting, right, which ends on October 1st, and there's a bunch of really, really good examples up here with blogs and videos. So I would just kind of encourage you to check that out, see what people are doing, see how people are being creative with these tools. And a lot of this stuff is even published on GitHub. So go out there, check it out, and I think that'll already be some time well spent. So this one is interesting. So I've talked a lot about data flows, really in the context of Power BI, right? So it makes a lot of sense from a Power BI perspective to have this data flow engine where I'm bringing in data from multiple sources. We talked a few weeks ago about building out a data lake where I can bring this data together and mash it up and start to innovate on this data from an analytics perspective. We're bringing those same capabilities to PowerApps, Doug.
Nice.
We're actually calling it data flows as well. So there's a little bit of marketing and branding normalization across these two products. We used to refer to this capability as data integration. We're now calling it data flows. Yep. And bringing some more of the connectors that you're used to over on the Power BI side, and bringing some more of the things that make those data flows powerful, such as merge queries, right? So in the SQL world, we'll call those like inner joins or left joins, being able to do those kinds of things, and really manipulate that data on the way in and surface that into the common data service entities, and then into your applications. So definitely take a look at this. If you're more of an app person and you've seen some of the things that I've been showing around the data flows in Power BI, you're getting some of those same capabilities now in PowerApps and the common data service, which I'm seeing more and more interesting in every week, Doug. So I thought this was pretty cool. A lot of, again, kind of brings a lot of the innovation that we've been doing over the last few years to more and more folks in the Power Platform. So pretty slick. All right. At first I thought this one was kind of a little boring, and then I noticed the really kind of the hidden gem here. So first, bringing the common Microsoft header, which includes the waffle. I know.
Let's cut to full screen on this
right?
one so we can.
What's that?
There we go. I said let's cut to full screen so we can see that.
Yes.
One. Yeah.
So we're bringing this across the different Canvas and model-driven apps. But the cool one here is the being able to pin your PowerApps apps to your I know I probably shouldn't be calling it the waffle, Doug, but what's the right way to call it?
It's technically the Office Application Launcher, was I believe its official name.
Yeah, the Office Application.
The waffle it is based on customer feedback.
Exactly. So being able to search for your apps across your organization, pin those to the launcher, and surface that up to your organization. And you can see, in this GIF here, they're pinning something called Thrive Apps. These are things that we use inside of Microsoft, right?
Yep.
To give kudos, to look for holidays, to even like put in vacation time and that kind of stuff. So this is actually super, super exciting and I think interesting. So I can have my PowerApps app, which are line of business apps, right next to my Teams icon or my SharePoint icon or my Yammer icon.
Nice.
So that's pretty slick.
Yeah.
So you were just talking about your SharePoint page checker extension for Edgeium. We've enhanced the PowerApps checker to include Canvas apps that are in solutions. So it's a pretty specific slice of what the PowerApps checker can do, but it's a pretty important one because we're encouraging people to use these solutions for transportability across environments from like dev to test to prod.
Nice.
As you have more and more components to solve a given business problem, such as maybe a flow and a couple apps, put that in a solution. The PowerApps checker, which does things and checks for performance and best practices, will now check for your Canvas apps inside your solutions. So
I also noticed that they, I don't know if it was a fix or a feature enhancement, but when you favorite certain things within apps, they now show up over in the favorites list appropriately. For a while, they weren't.
What's the inside of an app do a favorite?
Yeah, so like if you hit the favorite within an app that was because app gives for me an app is a containerization that gives sort of a curated experience around a collection of assets and reports and everything. Is that a fair enough way to describe it, right? And so so we have several of those inside of Microsoft, and that I use them, right? In order to do like they have one for how's all my teams doing on training, and they also have one for from the worldwide organization that we're a part of, from the technology and customer experience team, where I can look at certain analytics and stuff. But I would favorite something in there, and then it wouldn't show up over in my favorited dashboards because it's not a dashboard, it's an app.
Right.
But I'm like, but I favorited it. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see it over in my favorites. Well, those aren't your favorites, Doug. Those are your favorite dashboards. Well, apparently they fixed it. So because the thing I was expecting to be where it was now is, and so it's just a little polished stuff like that, like the ability to check things, the ability to have things. So I just love how they're continuing to refine both the tools for administrators and the user experience.
Well, we're just on this long-term cycle to enhance, mature, make better, and delight people. So
yeah.
You were delighted. I'm glad that you were.
I don't know why, but I was like, oh, look, it's there. It was just a really nice moment for, the productivity of me trying to get something done, right? So,
love it, man. Love those moments. Sweet. So definitely check that out if you're doing PowerApps and solutions. If you haven't started doing solutions, or you're doing PowerApps, definitely check that out and kind of get on some of those best practices. This one is about 5 seconds. The September update of the on-prem gateway is up to date. We've updated the mashup engine. That's it. Update it and get her done.
Just the mashup engine. No crazy new connectors. No new data sources. Just update it. Performance.
But all that cool stuff we talked about last week with the Power BI desktop.
Yeah.
You need to update your on-prem engine, on-prem data. Oh my gosh, that Vegas. I'm still not recovered. Your on-prem data gateway. Thank you. All right. Cool. So Douglas, that's all I've got.
That's it.
You have anything else?
No, we are 5 minutes early. Let's give people back some of their lives. Slow week for online attendance. Hopefully, a good week for for web and notes viewing out on it. Please let us know what you think of the shift over to Medium as a platform. We're kind of curious about that. And I will not be here next week. Nick Stillings will be subbing for me.
Oh,
he wants to go over some Teams adoptions. Nick's a former member of the MTC team who's now over in customer success and is running his extremely popular Teams adoption series again.
Very good.
Which is sort of this online governance and best practices. And if you know Nick, like he's a fan of the checklist manifesto approach to the universe, right? So you're going to get solid processes.
Not only that, if you told me Nick invented the checklist manifesto, I'd believe you.
I know. And so, but if you want to talk about like how do you get to done, how do you run events, how do you do these things? Nick runs workshops as good as anybody else on the planet, and he's running one. And he wanted to come on, co-host with you, and talk about that initiative, and just kind of get some cross program.
Well, I'm looking forward to next week. And folks. Spread the word. That'll be a special show. Anytime with Nick is good. So
anytime with Nick is definitely a charter. So, Mr. Stillings, thank you for subbing for me next week. I'm over in Amsterdam training new architects, so I will be in a crazy time zone. So I'll heckle you guys from online. Other than that, everyone have a great and safe week, and we will see you next week.
All right. See you, everybody.
Bye.